All right, Rob Geist Pinfold is a lecturer in international security at King's College London. He joins us now from the British capital. Good to have you back with us. So I want to start with the statements that have dropped from the French foreign minister since you and I spoke. Are they indicative of a widespread sentiment amongst Western leaders? Does it mean the West is no longer going to particularly arm the Kurds if the French foreign minister's words are understood as calling on them to lay down their weapons?
Yeah, I was actually surprised by that statement. Obviously, you heard him express support for the Kurds and say that they always stand with the Kurds. But at the same time, he expressly ruled out a Kurdish entity in eastern Syria. There is a de facto Kurdish-ruled entity in eastern Syria at the moment. But there's obviously attempts by the new central government led by HDS and Ahmed al-Shara to assert its authority throughout the entire country. And this is an issue very dear to Turkey. Remember that Turkey, Syria's northern neighbour, have very, very close relations to HDS, closer than any other external actor. And they see the eastern region of Syria, dominated by the SDF, as basically a terrorist enclave, and the SDF being no different from the PKK, whom they've been fighting for a long time. So it is quite interesting to see Western nations take a stance that's more in Turkey's favour than we've ever heard before. And it's also important to note there are ongoing negotiations within Turkey between Kurdish-affiliated factions and the government. And the question is, what will the ramifications be there for Syria? I think if those talks succeed, we'll see more of a moderating stance from the SDF and an integration of eastern Syria into Syria as a whole. If those talks fail, then all bets are off, and there is a possibility that we would see Turkey renew its military offensive against the SDF, either through direct military intervention or through the use of its proxy force, the Syrian National Army.
Now, Rob, if that scenario happens, that there is going to be a confrontation, I guess the key question is, what will the West and particularly the US position be? Because they have a base there, I think still so far. Trump has talked about pulling them out. And they've been arming the Kurds for years.
Yes, they have a base in southern Syria, but actually most of the US military presence in Syria is in eastern Syria. That's up to 20,000 troops we're hearing lately, so far more than initially thought. So the US does have a significant presence there, and the point of those US forces is theoretically to deter ISIL and stop ISIL from making a comeback, but they're also kind of acting as human shields, preventing Turkey from escalating its activities against the SDF. And this is why one of Turkey's first and foremost demands is that the US basically pull out its troops. And this is something that Erdogan negotiated with Trump during his previous administration. In the end, Trump had to backtrack on his pledge to withdraw US troops after he got so much dissent from inside his administration and in Washington, D.C. The question is whether he will do it or try to do it again. Now we're hearing a lot more pro-isolationist statements from Trump and his vice president-elect J.D. Vance, basically a vision that the US pull back from the world, but particularly the Middle East, and let allies police the region. So this would correspond very much to Turkey's game plan. The question is whether the West would allow that to happen.
We're seeing, obviously, increasing diplomatic contacts between Western officials and the new administration. What does that tell us about the direction the West is moving in when it comes to removing sanctions on Syria, removing sanctions and the terror designation on the HTS?
Well, the West is trying to play catch-up at the moment. There are several sanctions against Syria. As you say, there's sanctions against the HDS as a terrorist organization. That's not just from the West, by the way, but also the UN Security Council. There's sanctions against Syria. The US has designated Syria since the 70s as a state sponsor of terrorism. And there's more recent sanctions against Syria as a result of the Bashar al-Assad regime's conduct against its own people during the Syrian civil war. Ahmed al-Shara has consistently made made the point that those sanctions should no longer apply, given that the Assad regime is out of power. It's critical for him to get aid to Syria as soon as possible. He doesn't want that, basically, he wants to show that his new administration can make life better for ordinary Syrians. Don't forget that there were constant power cuts and all sorts of outages during the Assad regime as it struggled to keep up with demand. So he's going to want to show that he can govern Syria better. Now, countries like Saudi Arabia and Turkey have been escalating and significantly increasing the flow of aid over the border, through the Turkish border, and indeed through Jordan. So the Western countries are trying to catch up. They want things from al-Shara. They want guarantees that the regime, the new government, will be relatively secular, that will respect the rights of women and minorities. But at the same time, Ahmed al-Shara's fantastic diplomatic offensive here is yielding results. So the momentum is kind of shifting in his favor. And as a result, the West have to kind of basically give him more things than they would want to do, given that they want him first to deliver on his rather open and inclusive language.
All right. It's good to get your analysis on that. Rob, Geist Pinfold there from King's College London.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.